Hello everybody, and we are back in Chicago hanging out with my man Dave. We are at VeeamON, we are podcasting, we are doing all sorts of good stuff. But Dave, what brings you to Chicago? What brings you to VeeamON, and what's going on?
Yeah, so here I am, day 6 of being a Veeam employee, business day 6. So, I've known Veeam for a long time, a little over 10 years. I remember the first time I'd ever heard of Veeam. Ratmir, the co-founder and former CEO of Veeam, came up to me. I was at a Gartner conference. I'll get to that story in a moment. But he came up and said, Dave, we've got this new company. It's going to specialize in server-based backup, meaning virtualization. And I looked at the card and I wasn't even sure how to pronounce it, Veeam. And now here we are, literally a decade later, Veeam has come a long way. And now I'm excited to be a part of the journey. It's a funny story how I got here, but happy to be here.
Yeah, and if you guys aren't familiar with Dave, he's known a little bit in the backup industry. Some people may have heard of you. Can you kind of give some of your background about prior to your 6 previous days before Veeam?
Yeah. So the 28 years prior to the last 6 days, 15 years at IBM. My wife and I were developers on mainframe backup software at IBM. Another 5 years, a development manager of a product that was ADSM that became TSM, now known as Spectrum Protect at IBM. And the last half a decade at IBM, I was a technical strategist, manager of storage software architects. And quite unexpectedly, while negotiating, I'll say, IBM's position in a backup Magic Quadrant on a Sunday before a conference, Gartner said, hey, we're looking for an analyst if you know anyone that might be interested.
Sure.
So I thought, I might be interested. So that led to the next roughly 13 years, where for about a dozen years, I led the backup and recovery Magic Quadrant at Gartner, led a number of conferences the last half a dozen or so years, 6 years, I guess. So globally was an analyst, usually talking to anywhere from 500 to 800 or more people around the world a year, predominantly around backup and recovery. And then, decided to make a change. And when one company said, hey, we're looking for someone, would you be interested? And that kind of out of the blue made me think I might be interested, actually. And next thing I know, the current CEO of the company, Peter McKay, said, hey, I really want you to call me and talk to me, even though I understand you're getting other phone calls about people saying, we didn't think you were in play, meaning wanted to leave the analyst role and come to a vendor again. Yeah. And honestly, if it wasn't someone else, if it was someone else, rather, I wouldn't have done it. But I know Ratmir for a long period of time, like I said, meaning the co-founder of the company, the current CEO. I really think highly of him. The CMO, meaning Chief Marketing Officer, I met her for the first time in Boston a few weeks ago, I guess a month ago now, and I was blown away in a positive way. Good. I thought, here are people that really have their act together. Yeah. They've got a lot of funding, meaning they are masters of their own destiny. They haven't taken in external funding from anyone else, meaning private equity groups. They're not a public company. They don't have a desire to do either of those things. So they are highly profitable, masters of their own destiny, really trying to get further into the enterprise. And that's really my gig, my badge, which I'm sure you can't read. It basically says my name, and it says Vice President of Enterprise Strategy. What that means, I'll figure out on day 7, but I get the gist of it, which is go hard, go big in large accounts, meaning the Fortune 1000, the Fortune 500 accounts. Yeah, and that's a tough market to break into. I mean, let's not beat around the bush, not so much because it's scary or anything, it's just they're very set in their ways. They got to that scale by doing things very slow and methodically and not making big changes on the infrastructure side typically. And so, day 7 and day 8 might be difficult, but it's obviously, Veeam's got a lot of high quality reputation downstream from that, and it'll be interesting to watch to see how they grow up into those 50,000, 100,000 person companies. Yeah, I very much agree. And what's interesting is it's the point now where Veeam is known, meaning like someone will say, I've heard of your company. To your point, I've heard of it, and aren't you really better positioned for more of a commercial space, meaning make 100 VMs from a backup perspective, or a company that has 500 people associated with it. What I've seen, and because I've really spent 28 years largely in the enterprise space, is there's a lot of frustration out there in the backup world, meaning that the current enterprise class products are facing issues. Sometimes it's a cost issue. Sure. The maintenance is too high, the acquisition's too high. In some cases, it's too difficult to use on a daily basis. We don't want to have a team of people basically babysitting this one. I use it like a Formula One analogy. The car runs hot, the car runs fast, the car requires 12 people to make it keep going. And enterprises really aren't in that business anymore. You know, they can't afford to keep doing what they've done in the way they've always done it. And that's why I think Veeam's kind of got an exciting opportunity here. There are a lot of good other products out there. Veeam's goal, as it tries to get further into the enterprise, is to basically say we can do it easier. We think we can do it faster, in some cases better. In some cases we can't do it all. And we have to be very honest about that as well. But I do like the notion of, again, I go back to the phrase master of your own destiny. Ratmir, who is the co-founder of the company, he's very much of the opinion there's a good war chest. We will partner and or acquire to whatever we need to go and win in the enterprise.
Interesting. So let's take a step back here. What kind of trends are you seeing in the storage industry? Because there's a lot, there for a while everyone's saying, tape is dead. But,
I love tape.
But I was going to say, conversations we've had here and elsewhere, I don't think tape is really dead.
No.
It's just, maybe its critical role is changing, but definitely as a long towards storage medium is not going away anytime soon. What type of trends are you seeing in the industry?
Yeah, I want to just double click on tape for a moment. I've used the phrase, I'll be the last tape apologist. And part of the rationale for that is that, to your point, you know, your recovery of first resort might not be tape. Your long-term record preservation might ideally be tape. There's a reason in my past life I visited Google, and they don't like to talk about who their vendors are, but they will talk about they have exabytes of tape.
Oh, wow.
Microsoft Azure is much more public about what they use, meaning the vendors, the technology that they use. They also have exabyte of IBM tape. So the point there is not really is tape good or tape bad, it's really where is tape a best fit.
Sure.
I think it's going to be still reasonably in the mix for a lot of organizations for a long time. But if we go back to bigger trends, you know, some of the things that are going on basically, I think that the desire in the past to collapse to one backup solution to do everything is kind of giving way to, maybe I have to be practical about this and have a couple of solutions. Maybe I actually don't even want to have one product and I'm going to throw everything out the window and migrate over to it. Maybe I'd rather over time try to move where it makes sense, migrate where it makes sense from one solution to another. That's a very different kind of a motion than what we used to see. Another huge trend that I've got a lot of data back from my analyst life to support this is there's a lot of frustration out there, meaning a lot of the large installed solutions just aren't working anymore.
And what do you mean by not working anymore?
So in some cases, it's, you know, we can't keep up with the manpower required for this, or it's not working from a speed, meaning typically now, people forever talked about backup speed, and obviously that's important. You can't restore what you haven't backed up, but it's really restoration speed. It's really about, can I instantly mount that virtual machine or that application rapidly? You know, can I get my data back when and how I need to? And how else can I leverage backup beyond just the insurance policy I hope I never have to cache? Meaning, you know, thankfully, we don't have to restore all of our data on a regular basis, but obviously we want that security if we need it. Now we're transitioning into, well, what else can we do with that backup? Meaning, can I do a test environment? Can I do something around DevOps if you're a large enough organization to be engaged in that? Can I do a security patch test? You know, there are other maybe value streams to be able to be derived from backup. If you go through this heavy, I'm going to go move all the data across the network into another repository, 99% of the time I'm not going to need it. So what else could I be doing with that? That's probably the biggest opportunity I see. And you know, everyone's got to have backup. That's why everyone has a backup product or backup budget. Now it's to the next phase of, okay, well, how can I do that at a better cost structure, less frustration basically, you know, meaning ease of use, have the kind of restoration speed I need, maybe be able to repurpose that backup for other things. And then, you know, once you get to that point, if you have visibility into the backup, you know, you can maybe start to see some greater trends, you know, meaning we can now start to take that functionality and apply it more broadly in whatever the business is trying to achieve.
Interesting. Very, very detail-oriented insight, but that's obviously what we'd expect from somebody with, I don't know, probably much background in this as long as I've been alive.
How old are you?
I'm 32.
All right, so when you were 4, I was just getting into backup.
Yeah.
Actually, probably 3 because I didn't count the grad school side of it. So I ran the backup lab.
So not too far off, not too far off. Which is why I mean, I don't want to say I grew up in a world where tape wasn't a thing, but I came on into this industry kind of when tape was, I would say tape was there, but the cloud was kind of coming online.
Right.
I'm talking like 07, 08, when I really started like writing about this stuff. And at that point, it was like, why go tape? Go cloud, because that's better back off. It's up there. Microsoft has to deal with it. That's Amazon's problem if you break. And then everyone, a couple of years later, is like, it's not really Microsoft's problem if I can't get my data back.
Right.
It's my problem because now my company has gone under. Sure, I can sue Microsoft for whatever, but it doesn't help if my whole company is sunk.
Well, it's interesting, if you ever look at it, like one of the cloud companies that you just mentioned, they have a very public agreement that you sign up for or agree to. And if you go down the list, I can't remember if it was like clause 14 or 16, but it basically says, we don't guarantee that you can get to your data. We don't guarantee that your data won't be corrupt. We don't offer any kind of remediation.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, that doesn't happen on a regular basis.
Right.
But the point being, it's exactly what you said, is if the horrible nightmare scenario were to happen, you're on your luck. You're on your own. Good luck with that. And not because that vendor's trying to, basically leave you out on the cold, but it's not their responsibility. They're custodians of the infrastructure.
Right.
They are not there looking after your bits, which are really comprising your applications for your business. That's still on you.
Yeah. And the worst case scenario, and I had somebody tell me this, and I cannot remember who they are, but I'm stealing their whatever information. They said, imagine the scenario where that does happen, where a data center is just down and your data's corrupt. They said, do you really think Microsoft would let you walk into their data center, pull out your hard drive, and then send it off for recovery? The answer to that is probably no. Nobody really knows, but if it's your own data center, you could walk in there and feasibly extract those platters and at least have a chance at getting that data back.
Yeah, very true. And there's a flip side to that as well. I've heard a couple nightmare scenarios where in an outsourcing arrangement, the FBI's gone in and they have pulled the drives.
Oh, wow.
They weren't after your company. They were after another company that was commingled with your data.
Collateral damage.
Exactly. The FBI didn't stop to say whatever 20 companies might be commingled. We're going after these guys. We've got the warrant that says we can walk out with it.
Yeah, I mean, we're not trying to bash on the cloud here, at least I'm not. The cloud has very good benefits and it's great for hundreds of thousands of companies and applications, but it's not an end-all solution by any means.
I think I would liken exactly to tape. Tape is not good or bad. Cloud is not good or bad. Pick any other technology, on-prem, flash, whatever. These are all just tools. And so they have to be deployed in a manner that's going to help you achieve your business objectives. And, it's probably sounds horrible, but the reality is it's going to be a mix for most of us.
Yeah.
There might be some shops that are 100% cloud. I don't even want to have a data center. I don't want to have a data center closet, or anything. I don't want a server even. But the reality is for most organizations, there's going to be some on-prem. There's going to be some cloud. There's probably some SaaS application involved in that. The world is very federated. And that creates, opportunity, but also creates some complexity. That's one of the reasons why, Veeam has started off in server virtualization, VMware only, has expanded out from that, adding physical. Veeam added tape a number of years ago, interestingly enough. Very involved in the cloud, and a lot of great cloud partners, a lot of great resellers of Veeam that can help you, stand up an instance of Veeam and store that data in the cloud for disaster recovery purposes. On the other hand, that doesn't mean that you may not want to have an on-site copy of your data too.
Sure, very, very, it's just different ways of thinking about it. That's kind of one of the objectives we like to take at Petri is there's always a narrative. Veeam has a narrative, Azure has a narrative, AWS has a narrative. And if I was in Seattle last week and they're saying everything is cloud, but we know it's not. And so that's what you're helping us break through, kind of those backup narratives and making sure that everybody's protected and all that good stuff. And so if people have more questions or want to reach out to you, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
So as of tomorrow, I will have been on Twitter for a week.
Okay.
At Backup Dave, or Backup Dave is the Twitter handle. I can't say I can always read everything, but I certainly try to. On LinkedIn as well. And, a lot of great folks at Veeam monitor a number of forums. So if you do post something somewhere else, there's a good chance it might get back to me. But I think that, the big thing is it depends, but it depends in a good way, as you were saying. There is no one size fits all. 13 years I'm talking to probably 10 to 11,000 different customers when at Gartner. I really did realize there are patterns, but there's no absolute. And nor
Gotcha.
should there be. I mean, that's why, you know, the clothing store has like a zillion different shirts in there, because not everyone's the same
Yep.
size or wants the same color, and not everyone needs a long sleeve shirt when they live in the desert like I do.
Gotcha. Well, we very much appreciate you stopping by, and he's got all his contact information. Definitely give him a follow on Twitter if you're in this space, because clearly he's got quite a bit of expertise and knows a lot more about this than I do. But as always, folks, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Petri Dish. You can find out more on petri.com, and we'll catch you right back here next time.